My name is Nick Acosta, and I'm a developer advocate with OpenMetadata. And you're at AI-driven automation in open source metadata platforms, embedding an MCP server, or an MCP server. So one of the first conferences I went to was JupyterCon in 2017 in New York. I was just getting started in open source data science, but conferences like JupyterCon introduced me to how fun open source can be if you're active in it. And I've been in the open source data science space ever since, contributing to projects like Airflow, Prefect, and now OpenMetadata. So if you're new to the open source space, or new to data science, or AI, or new to Python, or all three, I think you're in really good hands here at JupyterCon. And if you're not new, you're very welcome as well. Is there anyone else that was at that JupyterCon 2017? Excellent. OK, so here's the agenda for today. We're going to start by explaining what OpenMetadata is and how you can use it to learn more about the data at your organization. And then why you would want to operationalize governance in your organization using AI. And then finally, introducing MCP servers that make that governance with AI possible, and discuss why you would want to pair an open source metadata platform with an MCP server. And we'll spend the rest of the time seeing what that looks like. So I wanted to start by introducing Loggy. Loggy delivers hundreds of thousands of packages a day as one of Brazil's largest logistics companies. And technology is at the core of their logistics network. And over the course of this session, we'll be taking a look at how both their data stack and other organizations' data stacks have changed as they've incorporated open source metadata platforms. So Loggy's data complexity has grown significantly recently. They are up to 9 million records a day that they're processing, and adding to a data warehouse that's over 100 terabytes in size, that's powering tens of thousands of database tables and dashboards as well. And it's not just Loggy, right? As a developer advocate, I've been exposed to thousands of different data environments. But you don't have to see many to know what's at the top of the screen here, right? Data complexity is growing. And in the past couple of years, I've seen many organizations not just choose a single path here from like data sources to ETL to warehouse, and then applications like dashboarding and machine learning models. It's not just a single path here, but adopting multiple data warehouses, or adopting multiple different ETL tools, or even multiple different cloud platforms, right? And Uber was one of the first companies to start doing this. Around 2021, their data platform was already processing dozens of millions of events a day. And they wanted to build an application that unified everything in their data platform. Everything that you see here, every component of a data system, regardless of where it falls in this diagram, they all have some common characteristics, right? Someone created or owns a data asset here. There's a lineage of where data comes from and where it goes to. There's a last time it was updated. We call all of these things a data asset's metadata, right? Data about these data assets. And Uber created a metadata platform to centralize and automate the curation of its metadata across all of its data systems. The creators of that project at Uber also created an open source OpenMetadata. So that's OpenMetadata. It is a unified place to store and analyze metadata, where a dashboard is the same as a table, is the same as a pipeline, is the same as a model. It standardizes a way to establish relationships between these entities and monitor access to them. Has anyone used OpenMetadata before or heard of OpenMetadata? We'll be taking a look at it later on. But in 3 words, it is a place where we are providing an open source way to discover the data assets your organization has, observe how they were created and how they change over time, and then govern and make sure that they're being used, maintained, and accessed correctly. And you can provide fine-grained access to any asset, no matter what your organization looks like. So bringing that diagram, bringing those logos back on the screen, we're standardizing metadata across the data stack so that you can store context on everything, right? And then we can also move quickly as an open source project as new data paradigms and new data tools come online. because we all know data complexity is not just growing, but it continues to grow. So with open metadata, you can share classifications and say a data incident occurred between maybe this data warehouse and this ETL service. Or we have a particular glossary term that's defined in Snowflake, but then we're using it in a Looker dashboard. You can join all of these things together and bring much needed context to a data environment. And for 4 years, OpenMetadata has been providing this context for data systems for every user in an organization. And now it is for AI agents as well. Providing workflows for everyone to deliver high quality outcomes efficiently. I want to key in on that efficiently. We'll be seeing an example of that in 2 slides. Breaking down data silos by providing a comprehensive context of data. And now there's over 100 integrations with OpenMetadata, so regardless of the tools that you're using, you can bring information into it and take action, discover and observe and govern your data assets. So if you put all of that together for an open source project, it may seem like a lot, right? And it definitely is. I think we've been blessed as data practitioners to have some open source projects that do maybe one thing really well. But there are a couple even open source projects like OpenMetadata, and I group Jupyter with this as well, that are just super feature rich, right, and have a ton of useful features. And I think when that's the case, it is valuable to break things down and see how other people have used it, especially other people early in their adoption journey, and then also to see it in action yourself, right? So we're going to be doing both of those now. So this is Logi. Again, as we saw, they've been building out their data platform. It's really gone skyrocketed recently in its complexity. And they're transforming their data for more efficient and reliable deliveries with open metadata. They've been using Looker. They've been using the same dashboarding service for over 10 years. And it grew to a state where there were copies of copies of copies of broken dashboards that were referencing long ago deleted tables. And simply by connecting their data stack to open metadata, they were able to see the lineage of data from tables to dashboards and mark duplicate dashboards or mark dashboards that weren't working anymore in tables as well for deletion. And they were able to achieve both Redshift and Looker savings from day one of their open metadata implementation. Soon with open metadata, they saw 30% faster ETL pipelines, almost 90% fewer Looker dashboards. They were able to delete everything that had kind of grown into their Looker sprawl and dropped over thousands of Redshift tables from their warehouse. And these coupled together provided thousands of dollars in savings a month for Logi. Here you can see in this purple box in the corner, a quote from Logi: "Open metadata has been useful since day one in the company. Everyone claimed it was difficult to find tables for specific information needed, or even to know who to reach out to in order to get more information," which certainly sounds familiar to me. And now all our data components are in one place, and our users have been giving good feedback about the experience. And similar to Jupyter, you can run open metadata locally, which is what I'll be showing in a demo. But the desktop version is really just for testing purposes. Most people run open metadata in a cloud. It facilitates collaboration between different data practitioners, so having it in a cloud is important. And it's stateless as well, so you can, in a cloud, spin up or turn down services to scale things up or down as your data stack changes. You just need to couple it with a database, a search indexing tool, and a scheduler. So if you're running open metadata on AWS, you may use it with, we package it so that you can spin everything up and have open metadata manage your databases and indexes and schedulers, things like that. Or you can integrate it into your Amazon RDS, your OpenSearch, your Amazon workflows for Apache Airflow, things like that, like integrating them together. So we see this combination of it being really flexible and being able to run without ever logging into Airflow or logging into your database. And a lot of people do that. And a lot of people do incorporate these into their existing services and really fine-tune them and make them really efficient and performative at scale as well. So it's not just Logi using OpenMetadata. We're fortunate to just pass the 11,000 member mile mark at slack.open-metadata.org. So there's 11,000 community members discussing, how to make OpenMetadata as easy and useful as possible across 2,000 enterprise deployments. We're closing in on 8,000 GitHub stars. And another one is just past 370 open source contributors. So we had a lot of people where this is their first JupyterCon. If you're looking to get into open source and become a contributor, I'd recommend taking a look at OpenMetadata. I started using OpenMetadata and then had my first contribution merged the next week. So I think it's a really great avenue to get into open source. And as I mentioned, there's over 100 connections. So if you're using Snowflake or if you're using Databricks or Redshift or what have you, there's going to be a familiar component to you for OpenMetadata, so you can just kind of build what you know and then add it to the open source project. So it's really easy to get started contributing. Okay, with that, I wanted to switch gears briefly here and talk about another open source project. This one is from Anthropic. It's called Model Context Protocol, or MCP. I know that, is anyone else building with these or heard of MCP before? I know there's been a couple sessions at our conference here. Has anyone caught? Exactly. Awesome. So just to quickly introduce MCP, agents don't really know anything about your internal customer base, right? But if you expose an agent to your CRM, it can learn a lot really quickly, and it can take effective actions. But MCP provides a way to pull data from these internal systems and push actions to them. But we saw that logo, or the previous slides with all the logos. There's a lot of data tools, and there's a lot of agents, right? And before MCP, each one of those tools would have to write its own interface to every one of the rapidly developing agents out there. And now you can just maintain a single MCP server implementation. And it does a great job abstracting away details too. So you can expose your data systems and take action on them in a way where you don't need access to Python or GPUs or things like that. So really looking forward to showcasing OpenMetadata's MCP server in a demo coming up. So OpenMetadata has an MCP server embedded in every implementation. So it comes out of the box. There's no extra components to deploy or services to manage or update or anything like that. And it is leveraging OpenMetadata's unified knowledge graph rather than low-level API endpoints. So I like to think of it as a more task-oriented MCP server than an API-oriented MCP server. You don't have to know what OpenMetadata's API endpoints do or what parameters they need or which ones were added in the last version or which ones are changed. You just, as they change, the whole community, all of those 2,000 deployments that you saw, get those updates and get access to new and better MCP tooling. And our MCP server, because it's embedded into the open source project, it uses the same authorization engine that our MCP or that our OpenMetadata server uses. So if you have a particular role defined and you want to prohibit access to an agent of some services or grant them access to another, it's really easy to do so through OpenMetadata. I think simply put, MCP servers and OpenMetadata are both open source tools that expose valuable context, and pairing them makes both work better together. That's what we've been seeing in the OpenMetadata community. There have been a lot of people working with the OpenMetadata MCP server on that Slack that I mentioned earlier. Marat is a data architect for a global ad platform. And he curates what he would like to see from OpenMetadata at the database level, right? Refining some of the characteristics and classifications that he has there. And then he pushes those changes down from a database to all the tables within that database. So it's really enabling him to scale out his work there. And we'll see what that looks like in a second. But then we also have Amen, Ayman is a data engineer at a renewable energy firm called NW in France, and he is combining OpenMetadata's MCP server with Grafana's as well to be able to both push updates to OpenMetadata and pull stats that he can build visualizations off of. So let's take a look at what that might look like here. Okay, this is OpenMetadata. So let me make this just a little bit bigger here. Okay, you can see at OpenMetadata, this is the home page where I'm greeted by an activity feed. You can see some of the last actions that I've taken, and then some of my data assets as well. I have some MySQL assets in here and Postgres as well, but you can just as easily store things on Snowflake and Fivetran and Databricks and all of those 100 different connectors that I mentioned. I am going to drill into a particular, database that I have stored within OpenMetadata, a particular Postgres database. And you can see a number of information that we store on the metadata, the number of tables that are in this database, who owns each table, things like that. But you can see that our metadata here is pretty sparse. I don't have a domain or an owner for it, or even a certification. So I can apply a certification pretty easily. We have a certification for gold or silver or bronze tables. So this is a concept within data architectures where bronze tables would be like your raw data that hasn't been modeled or transformed yet. But gold data tables are something that are ready for a dashboard to consume, right? They've been modeled, they've been prepared and verified by a data team that this can be utilized for a machine learning model or a dashboard or things like that. A silver table would just be something that's in between, right? Something that's maybe had some transformations done on it, but it's not quite ready. Anyway, we can mark a database as being a gold certified database. And then with all of the tables that I have within that database, go through and do those same sort of certifications. Right, and you can see easily that I have 7 tables here, but I mentioned Murat is a data architect for a global ad platform. So he's not dealing with databases that have 7 tables. They have hundreds and thousands of tables. So it's pretty easy to go through and click and add these certifications. But to do so hundreds of times, even if it's easy, that's the type of work that we can scale out to an AI agent. So let's see what that would look like. And I'm going to be using Goose. Is anyone familiar with Goose? It's an open source AI platform that was developed by Block that I've been using a lot lately. It allows you to pair any sort of model or any sort of model provider. You can see I'll be using GPT-4, but I have a number of other model providers that are configured here in Goose. And then you can set up whatever you would like. And you can pair those models with MCP servers as well. So I think of it as like an agent server broker, right? Where I can create agents where I can pairing this model with this MCP server and then having Goose facilitate those connections. So I'm just pasting a prompt in here that I want Goose to have GPT-4 run, where I'm going to be taking that certification, that gold table that we applied to our database. I'm going to have it find all the tables within that database and apply the same sort of certification to every table. So I'll say push the certification to all tables. You can see it will be getting the entity details, so it's going to be getting that certification from the database level and then pushing it down to all of those tables. So here I have that database. All of the tables now will share that same certification, which is great, right? I've been able to package an agent with an MCP server, write a couple prompts that let it both read data from my OpenMetadata and write actions back to it. And if you want to try that out, again, this is all using open source except for GPT. Everything else is open source. And I'm happy to announce that this is easier than ever. So we've been working with the Goose team at Block. They just developed something called Goose recipes that allow you to bundle MCP servers, prompts, and agents all together. And it's never been easier to get started with just agents in general or MCP servers, and it's definitely never been easier to get started with the OpenMetadata MCP server. So we have that here via a Goose recipe that we developed with the Block team called Use OpenMetadata. So to be able to just see that demo that I just did, we can not just apply that gold certification, but we can maybe assign an owner to this database as well, and have, via this Goose recipe, you'll see I'm just going to be telling Goose where to look. And that's all that I'll need to do to be able to get this demo up and running again. So I just launched that Goose recipe. It's asking me where within OpenMetadata it wants me to do this work. And that demo that I just showed now, you don't have to do any prompt engineering. You don't have to do any selection there, but we can apply, that apply those same changes here via the Goose recipe, and then see them happen for every table as well. Okay, so I also wanted to wrap up this demo with incorporating Jupyter Lab as well, right? So I have this information, and we saw Amen is a data engineer at a French renewable energy company, and he was able to combine MCP servers, right? So he's taking that metadata from OpenMetadata, having an agent build visualizations for it, and create those for him. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So I can create a new notebook named JupyterCon and build a visualization of the, let me just check here first and say, how many assets does the data team own? So now we're going to be searching and making sure that those updates that we just applied are now in our OpenMetadata. So I can say how much does every team own, and get a breakdown of not just the assets that my data team owns, but seeing how much other teams own. We can see that there's an AI team that owns 169 assets, that data team, and a Python team as well. Now I want to create a new notebook named JupyterCon and build a visualization of those assets that each team owns. So I was using the OpenMetadata MCP server before. Now I'm going to be using Jupyter's MCP server as well to create a new notebook and write that code for me, and then run that code as well. So here you can see my JupyterCon notebook that was just created 10 seconds ago by that Jupyter MCP server. You can get the stats that we pulled directly from OpenMetadata and create that visualization. So just wanted to recap here. One more slide for you guys. OpenMetadata here is an open source metadata platform that provides data discovery, observability, and governance, right, for every data asset in your organization, for every data practitioner, and now every agent as well. Model Context Protocol standardizes the interface between agents and tools and gives AI the right context to make the right decisions and perform the right actions. But then if you use them together, you can bring the context and governance of your full data stack to AI agents and have them take actions that improve your data systems at scale. And you can join our Slack, right? That's where I was able to get clued in on Murat's use case of our MCP server and Amen and how they were using those MCP servers together. You can join our Slack here, or definitely give us a star on GitHub as well. But thank you all for attending, and happy to take any questions. But yeah, thanks again for being here and having me. Any questions? Yeah, it looks like we have a couple. Yes, yeah. So here, let me see if I can find OpenMetadata again. Yeah, so OpenMetadata has this version history where you can see every change that it's made and then see, I only have one user in my OpenMetadata, it's admin, but you can create a OpenAI user, right, and just give it that key. So it'll say, instead of just having the admin do every action, you have that trail and you can roll back changes, things like that. Thanks again, everyone.